Today, the presidents of Poland, Germany, and Israel marked 80 years since the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. It was the largest Jewish revolt against the Nazis during World War II. Hundreds of young Jewish fighters took part in the nearly month-long battle. It ended when the Nazis crushed the uprising and sent all remaining Warsaw Ghetto survivors to forced labor camps or to concentration camps. 6 million Jews were murdered in the Holocaust. One of the architects and most loyal and high-ranking officers of Hitler's Nazi party was a man named Arthur Seyss-Inquart. And it turns out he might have escaped justice, if not for the man you're about to meet. A Holocaust survivor from the Bronx sharing his heroic story with the public for the first time. Sorting through yellowed black and white photos in his Bronx apartment, 98-year-old Norman Miller remembers a family lost forever.
My mother wasn't very good on the bike.
How Norman's parents and sister died in the Holocaust seared into the memories of his sons, Steve and Mike Miller.
Him with his parents in his lederhosen.
But there's one story Norman kept secret for 60 years that stunned them and sent them scrambling for answers.
Who knew what was going to happen?
It spilled out during a visit to the U.S. Holocaust Museum in Washington, while the three were looking at an exhibit about the most notorious Nazis.
Out of the blue, he just turned to us and said, "I told you I arrested him, didn't I?"
Him was Arthur Seyss-Inquart, the Nazi minister of Austria and Holland, who oversaw the deportation and murder of tens of thousands of Jews.
And he pointed at a picture of Seyss-Inquart. And we looked at each other like, what is he talking about? Had he arrested this Nazi?
And that's when he told an incredible story they'd never see in pictures that began in 1939, when 15-year-old Norman narrowly escaped the grip of the Nazis. 3 days before the war broke out in Germany, Norman's father secured him a spot on the Kindertransport, a rescue effort for children living in Nazi-controlled territory.
My father went over. Could I go travel with them? They said yes.
Norman was sent to an orphanage in England. His family would send letters and pictures, like this one, with his face pasted onto it.
So it's the last family portrait, even though he was already gone.
Less than 2 years after being separated from his family, the letters abruptly stopped. Norman later learned they were sent to a concentration camp in Latvia.
They didn't have the gas chambers at that time yet. That shot him.
All alone in the world, Norman enlisted in the British Army, serving with the Royal Welsh Fusiliers. And on the day the Nazis surrendered, as documented in this Army newspaper from 1945, his battalion was at a checkpoint in Hamburg when an officer stopped a car and asked Fusilier Miller to look at the papers of a man inside because they were in German.
He was Austrian, but he was a Nazi. A big Nazi.
And you saw that name and you knew it right away.
You know, you live in Germany and these names appear in the newspaper.
It was Seyss-Inquart. The Nazi commander was trying to escape. Instead, he was arrested and later found guilty at the Nuremberg trials, sentenced to death and executed. How did it feel to know that you stopped him from getting away?
I wasn't overjoyed. It didn't help to bring my parents back. Family back.
Now, at age 98, spending his days at River Spring Living, Norman still reflects on his tragic past, especially his father, who made the painful decision to save his son by sending him away.
Even now, sometimes I think, what was his last thought? Did he think about me?
Grateful for that trip to the U.S. Holocaust Museum that prompted Norman to reveal his heroic role, the Miller family donated all of Norman's artifacts.
It's important to have it on paper.
You know, that it was a young Jewish boy who had escaped his grip and managed to catch him at the last minute. It seems kind of like poetic justice. And this previously untold story isn't just remarkable for obvious reasons. It's also highly unusual to have any Holocaust survivor today who was old enough back then to have vivid memories of what happened. And now, thanks to this interview and sharing his collection with the Holocaust Museum, his story will live on for future generations to see.